In the good old days, we would leave the house first thing in the morning and we wouldn't come back until the sun went down. We were the first generation to use the internet. Back then, we had to wait for commercial breaks and run like hell to get everything done before the program started again. More than 2 decades ago, the only screen device that caught children's attention, like a smartphone, was a Game Boy, or a Game Gear if you sided with, Sega, which I did. But even then, time spent on handheld video games did not come close to matching the hours kids spend on social networking and other apps today. So, what were they doing with their free time if memes, viral clips, or the latest TikTok craze didn't hypnotize them? Well, we had landlines, movie stores, and walkie-talkies. We used our legs and feet to get wherever we wanted to be and spent 90% of our time outside. We had fun, made friends, and experienced the world without the internet. I'm Mike with List 25, and I loved every moment of being a 90s kid. And today, I'm here to remind you of 25 activities 90s kids enjoyed that are rare for today's kids. 25. Making cootie catchers. In the 90s, we had fortune tellers on the school bus. Their hands moved in familiar patterns. They folded a piece of paper in half, then tucked the corners toward the center and creased them. And as they worked, a small, magical cube-like tool appeared. We'd choose numbers and colors. It moved, opened, closed, and revealed our futures. Okay, maybe it wasn't quite that epic, but if you were hanging out with a group of friends, you definitely made a paper fortune teller or cootie catcher. Our cootie catchers predicted future spouses, where we'd live, what we'd become, how many children we'd have, and the cars we would drive. And in that moment, we knew it would all come true. 24. Spending a whole day outside without adult supervision. In the good old days, we would leave the house first thing in the morning and we wouldn't come back until the sun went down. And the best part, or the worst part if you think about it with a 2020 and beyond mindset, our parents usually had no idea where we were. We spent our days exploring and only decided to go home when A, it got dark, or B, we got hungry. Yet our hide-and-seek games were the stuff of legends. I'm talking about a whole neighborhood big. If we felt particularly sneaky, we'd tell a kid to go hide and never look for them. As a child, having that tiny bit of freedom was truly priceless. I got in trouble one day because I went hide-and-seek, didn't tell my mom. So she didn't know I was hiding, so she couldn't find me. 23. Recording songs straight from the radio and making mixtapes. There's nothing better than discovering your favorite summer jam. But in the 90s, we had to sit around with our buddies and wait for it to come on the radio so we could record it on a tape. And let me tell you, getting the timing right between hitting record and pressing stop was a form of art. Not only that, but you never knew when it'd actually start playing, unless you had a top-of-the-charts type radio program you could tune into. So we lived in a constant state of readiness, tape recorder on standby, just in case that hit song came on, and we were in the right place at the right time. 22. Going to the library. Now I know many of you will immediately jump into the comments section when you hear this, and you know what? Don't let me stop you. Yes, we know libraries still exist, are still relevant, and being used. But in the 90s, we used them. If you didn't have money for new books, there were no e-readers back then, folks, you would go to the library, sometimes more than once per week. Some of us got our first taste of horror when we discovered Bram Stoker's Dracula in the forbidden adult section, and we'd often return to absorb the worlds of Stephen King and John Saul. We'd also explore our school libraries and their musty books for our projects. Today, you can find absolutely everything online. 21. Going to the theater to watch Titanic over and over again. Yes, some of us actually did that. Upon the film's release in 1997, Titanic, made by the legendary James Cameron, was the most expensive film ever made. It cost a whopping $200 million. In fact, inflation made the film more expensive than the actual Titanic, $200 million versus $150 million. The movie became a worldwide phenomenon, and it's impossible to imagine anyone else as Jack and Rose. Still, things could have gone quite differently if Matthew McConaughey and Gwyneth Paltrow got the roles instead. They were the original choices for the parts. But a relatively unknown Kate Winslet apparently sent Cameron a bouquet of roses with the words, "Roses from your Rose," which landed her the audition and the part. 20. Looking for everyone's bikes and rocking handlebar streamers. We can all remember going around the neighborhood in search of our friends. There was no texting. You simply had to look for the house with the most bikes in front of it, and bingo, you found your crew. And your bike wasn't kitted out unless you were rocking handlebar streamers in bright and reflective colors. It was pretty much the only way to go. And don't get me started on spoke beads. If you sported those, you were probably the coolest person in the group. Oh, I had neither. I wasn't cool. Oh no. 90s Mike wasn't cool. My mom said I was cool. No, she didn't. 19. Keeping our Tamagotchi alive. You had to know you'd come across Tamagotchi on this list. They were one of the ultimate toys of the 90s. Everyone wanted one. We didn't have the fancy robot toys kids nowadays have. We spent our summer days with no homework to worry about, feverishly attempting to keep our Tamagotchis alive. And it was a mission. The palm-sized egg-like toys with their terrible black and white pixelated screens were a self-contained cosmos full of both happy and sad moments. We all quickly learned how to hack our games, did we? Extending the lives of our virtual pets, what? By removing their batteries or triggering a debugging signal with pencil graphite. Oh man, so many lost Tamagotchis I could have kept alive. Oh, rest in peace, Zippy. Wish I had known that. So many dead Tamagotchis. 18. Watching the biggest blockbuster movies over Independence Day weekend. During the 90s, it felt like a big blockbuster movie was released every 4th of July weekend. The tradition of releasing major films around Independence Day weekend began in 1985 with Back to the Future, but it really took off with Terminator 2 in 1991. The list of July 4th movies also include A League of Their Own, Independence Day, and Armageddon. This tendency has waned significantly, probably due to the poor performance of many 4th of July films and a shift in viewing habits due to the pandemic. However, these movies were everywhere in the 90s thanks to mass marketing, from billboards and TV ads to fast food tie-ins. I recall one brilliant marketing strategy for Independence Day. There were random floppy disks, remember those, that you could buy at toy stores that allowed you to play parts of a computer game, but you needed to get all of them if you wanted to finish it. I remember that. I only had one. It was fun. I'm gonna see if I can find a Let's Play of that. 17. Buying teen magazines for their freebies and spending hours doing their quizzes. It could be because we didn't have as many electronics, but magazines used to be a big thing. We would browse magazine stands looking for the best freebies while our moms paid for the weekly groceries. It was one of the highlights of our week. And the best part about these old teen magazines, they had quizzes. Basically the old school version of BuzzFeed quizzes. Every good teen magazine had a flowchart that told you something about yourself, all of which felt life-changing at the time. And then we'd do the quizzes for our friends too. 16. Writing letters and pen pals. I don't know if schools all over the world had pen pal programs, but many of us enrolled in such programs and found pen pals in other parts of the world. This led to copious amounts of letter writing, and buying postage stamps, and going to the post office. These are all things that kids today will never experience, most likely. Email, baby. Pen pals often lasted for, not even email, what am I talking about? Just literally messaging, whatever. Pen pals often lasted for years and years, and there have been instances of old pen pals celebrating their birthdays together multiple decades later. Oh boy, and if you dared to call these friends long distance, you knew you had to talk quickly with how expensive it was. 15. Using disposable cameras. Before we all had high-res professional-grade cameras right in our pockets that could hold hundreds of photographs, we could only take about 25 photos per roll of film. That was if you could afford a proper camera. Most of us had to settle for disposable cameras, and they eventually became quite popular among the kid/teen population in the 90s because they were affordable and only took a few pictures before you could have your mom drop you off at the local drugstore to get them developed. Plus, they were reasonably priced, so we could easily buy them with our allowance. Today, however, disposable caters to a more experimental and niche audience. 14. Waiting days to get our pictures back. While I'm on the subject of disposables, I must say I miss having so many actual pictures in the house. Today, they're all safely tucked away on external hard drives. I don't miss having to wait for those pictures though. In the 90s, if you saved up your allowance to buy a disposable camera, you could have a photo shoot with your friends and deliver said camera to the drugstore. Then you had to wait a couple days before you could go to pick them up. It felt like it took forever, and it was always a surprise to see how they came out. That is, if they did. Images were often blurry and terrible, and our eyes were closed on half of them. And the red eye. So much red eye. Imagine being unable to look at and delete bad pictures before immediately taking a new photo. Today, that's unheard of. 13. Spending an entire day at the mall. There's a reason a movie called Mallrats came out in 1995. We loved going to the mall. Our parents used to drop us off when the mall opened and would only come to pick us back up when it got dark. And, we had to go to bed. The mall was air conditioned. You could spend your allowance on a few items and gossip with and sometimes about your friends. If a tween did that now, people might think they were abandoned. We also had enough money to spend some of that time, usually a few hours, at the arcade. It didn't cost more than $5. Today, that'll get you approximately 10 minutes of entertainment if you're lucky. 20. Playing Goldeneye 64. This was, without a doubt, the most iconic video game of the 90s. Goldeneye changed how we played first-person shooters by breaking away from the fixed-rail concept, and in the process, buried Doom. Development began in 1995, and when the game was published in August 1997 on the Nintendo 64, no one expected it to be such a hit. It was the first game to make use of all 4 controller plugs, and is regarded as the forefather of multi-screen deathmatches, which was actually added last minute. The game is widely regarded as the single most influential first-person shooter in gaming history. It was a blast. And I'll tell you what, if you want to play it now, they've released it on, if you have a Nintendo Switch and you have the Nintendo Online, the Virtual Console, the N64 Virtual Console has Goldeneye. So if you played it and you miss it, you can go back. If you are, younger and you've never heard of it and you're interested, you can try it. I recommend adjusting the control scheme though. Going back to how that control scheme used to be, where you actually had to hold the button to aim because there was only one thumbstick, doesn't work as well anymore. So if you go to play it, look up a way to make the controllers more modern. Trust me. 11. Going to the drive-in movie theater. If you lived in a small town in the 90s, the only way you got to see a relatively new blockbuster was at the drive-in movie theater. We would get all dressed up, pack the snacks, pull into our spot, and hardly be able to hear anything while trying our best to see the screen from the back seat. Especially since our parents would be enjoying the movie from the front without a care in the world about our viewing pleasure. Luckily, by the second time, you knew you had to pack a blanket and create your own happiness, as no one else would do it for you. Come to think of it, maybe my parents wanted me to get out of the car all along. That's from our writer, not from me. I never went to a drive-in movie theater. 10. Building our JNCO collection. I know, how did jeans make it to this list? Before I go on, you must realize these jeans defined a generation, and we built collections from them. You didn't just go and buy the first one you saw. Great thought and wardrobe planning had to go into each purchase. And did I mention they came out in every imaginable color? Los Angeles-based Haim Milo Reva and Jacques Yakov, two brothers, founded JNCO, Judge None, Choose One, in 1985. The brothers wanted to break the mold and were greatly inspired by the baggy pants of metropolitan Californian Latinos, so they used $200,000 of their life savings to do so. Looking back, it's hard to believe any of us actually wore these, but it all boiled down to a rebellious generation who thought that Levi's, popularized by the boomers, was old and uncool. The most popular leg width was 23 inches, but JNCO also made one that was 50 inches wide. 9. Learning a phone number by heart. Back in the day, when you met a new friend at the pool or park and asked them for their phone number, you actually had to remember it. And depending on where they lived, those numbers could be 10 digits long. In fact, numbers went from 7 to 10 digits starting in 1994. We had several tricks to remember the numbers. We'd repeat them in rhymes or patterns, look for ways to make sums with the even or uneven numbers, or break them into smaller groups, 3s or 4s to remember them more easily. Since you couldn't always write them down, organization was key. And also, I'm one of the few people that still kind of remembers numbers today. At my other job, I do have to ask people for phone numbers, and they always have to look them up, sometimes even their own. And you're a monster if you don't give the phone number in the proper rhythm, in that phone number rhythm. I think it was either Kevin James, Seinfeld, Jim Gaffigan maybe? Someone mentioned that, but it's always ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba. So my old phone number, which doesn't exist anymore, 839-6035. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I had someone the other day give me a number. They're like, it was 222. No, they were like 22, 222, 22. I'm like, oh, that's terrible. So you're a monster if you don't give it in that rhythm. Rant over. Maybe block out my number. It's not mine anymore. It's someone's. 8. Waiting for commercial breaks to get up from the couch. Today, it's easy to pause your favorite show if you want to eat, drink, visit the bathroom, or do whatever. Back then, we had to wait for commercial breaks and run like hell to get everything done before the program started again. On the plus side, if you were fast, you could make a bowl of popcorn and make it back in time just as the ads were over. And if you missed your show and didn't plan ahead to record on VHS, well, that was just too bad. It was lost to time, and your friend's recollection of what happened during the episode. And we had epic fights when a sibling taped over our favorite shows. One of the biggest drawbacks of the good old VHS system. 7. Owning, playing, and loving the very first PlayStation. Yes, people, we were the first. And those first PlayStations changed our worlds. The Sony PlayStation, released in Japan in 1994 and then here in North America in 1995, was actually planned to be developed in collaboration with Nintendo. However, around 1991, Nintendo broke away from Sony and partnered with Philips. The PlayStation was considered a high-risk endeavor because it was the first genuine attempt at 3D gaming. Surprisingly, the disc's black color was chosen solely for aesthetic purposes. Crash Bandicoot was initially intended to be a wombat. In addition, the PS1 had 2 failed mascots. The first was Polygon Man, a head composed of shapes to display the outlines of the 3D effects, and the second was Toro, an obscure white cat character that stayed in Japan. 6. Using Bebo, Piczo, and MySpace. In the days of yonder, social networking was, well, social. Before the days of uploading videos on Facebook, posting selfies on Instagram, and surfing Twitter, or I guess X now, we'd spend hours on Piczo making a webpage about ourselves, sending love to friends on Bebo, and making MySpace pages, all while chatting with our friends on MSN Messenger or AIM, despite having just said goodbye to them moments ago. We didn't have all the tools kids have today, but we made the most of what we had. In fact, some of those MySpace pages would still rock today. We should all go have a look. I bet mine's still up there. Who were your top 5? What song was playing when you decided? What was your background song for MySpace? Time is cyclical. I bet MySpace makes a comeback. Speaking of time, you should check out our video about time facts. 5. Reading Big Brother magazine. The first issue came out in 1992 with a warning label and a cartoon of a teen pointing a gun at his nose. And that tells you almost everything you need to know about this magazine. During the second issue, Jackass creator Jeff Tremaine decided to join the outrageous Steve Rocco-led ride, which in essence became a middle finger to the corporate-run skater magazines of the time. It was rude, crude, obnoxious, and disgusting. It was everything a skater kid in the 90s wanted. Big Brother printed everything. And I mean it when I say everything. The editorial team often pulled off crazy pranks, like packaging issues in cereal boxes, and it was the first magazine to add VHS cassettes and stickers. Big Brother was the ultimate forerunner of DIY media before the internet. 4. All the tricks we used to keep our CDs playing. When CDs came along, we instantly realized they were way cooler than tapes, but they were terribly finicky. If you didn't put a CD back in its case immediately after taking it out of your CD player, scratches would literally jump onto it. I kid you not. Or maybe I'm over-exaggerating a little bit. To get our scratched and non-scratched CDs playing without skipping, we devised several tricks and shared them with one another. Blowing hard onto your CD player and shirt rubbing your CDs were all socially accepted ways to make your CDs play without skipping. My absolute favorite though, and one I still use to this day, consists of gently rubbing toothpaste into your CD's grooves, leaving it to harden, and then gently washing it off afterward. It works like a charm. Where's my pocket? There's my pocket. 3. Using maps and living through terrible road trips. If your parents decided to do a family road trip, they did not have navigation to assist them. They depended on paper maps, frequently leading to getting lost or taking unexpected detours. And somehow these detours became our best vacation memories. And stop right there. I know what you're thinking. Sure, everyone has to take a road trip at some point in their lives. But imagine everything you despise about road trips and then remember that we did it with no screens at all. And a lot of our parents smoked, luckily not mine. It wasn't fun to spend hours in a car inhaling secondhand smoke. Not only did we not have sophisticated mobile game alternatives like the Switch or the PSP or the Nintendo 3DS. I mean, we did have Game Boy and Game Gear, as I mentioned earlier, but there was no way to play movies of any kind in vehicles for a long time. Remember, MP3 players were still a ways off, so your best bet was a stack of tapes in your parents' Walkman. Trust me on this one. Every 90s kid has a couple of road trip horror stories to tell you. I have one. It's not really a road trip horror story, but it is. So when I was younger, and I still had to sit in the back seat and whatnot, and I just found this out recently, literally maybe a year or so ago, but whenever my mom and dad, when we were driving and they saw a McDonald's up ahead, they knew that I would ask to stop at it because I love McDonald's. So apparently they would throw something in the back and go, "Oh no, oh Michael, we dropped that, can you get it for me?" And I'd go, "Sure." So I'm doing this while we drive past the McDonald's, so I don't see the McDonald's, and I don't ask them to stop. My mom just told me this not too long ago. I never knew. Not really a road trip story, but somewhat relevant. Hashtag Mike stories. 2. Following every second of Princess Diana's death and funeral. Before millions of people tuned in to watch William and Harry's royal weddings, 90s kids watched in horror as the world learned that Princess Diana passed away. Princess Di was the most famous woman in the world and captured the hearts of millions. So it was only inevitable that Princess Diana's death would dominate headlines when her life tragically ended in a vehicle accident in Paris on August 31st, 1997. Her burial in London a week later on September 6th was one of the most watched television events in history. Thousands of people filled the streets to pay their respects, and millions of flowers were strewn at her home, Kensington Palace, to say thank you and goodbye. I can still remember exactly what I was doing the day she died and where I sat down to watch all the events that followed. Every 90s kid does. And I've actually talked about what I was doing in a previous video, but to quickly recap, I was at a friend's house, and he and I had, for some reason, were discussing death when we arrived. We watched a movie about reincarnation, Fetch, I think it was, Fletch, and then I couldn't sleep at night, and the phone rings in my mom's friend's bedroom, in my friend's mom's bedroom, and so I'm sitting there going, "Who's calling at like 3 a.m?" And then I can hear her get completely surprised and shocked. You can hear she starts crying. I'm like, "Oh no, something's wrong." So I kind of wander into her room and knock on her door, and she calls me in, and she turns on the news and she tells me. So to have, to be thinking of death all day, and then to that, it was weird. Sorry, a lot of. Every kid does remember. I guarantee it. 1. Using the internet for the very first time. We were the first generation to use the internet. Although the World Wide Web was technically invented in 1989, it really took off in the 90s. In fact, the number of websites worldwide went from a mere 130 in 1991 to more than 100,000 by 1996. And yes, I know kids today have the internet. You are literally watching an internet video right now. But we were the first generation to use it. Sure, we had to use dial-up, which was a nightmare in and of itself, and it took forever for even the most basic websites to load. But the internet was amazing. That was when we had time to get on. If we could, we had to wait until someone finished their phone call. In addition, if you've ever sneaked downstairs to sign on late at night so you could sleep in the next day, you would understand and remember the intense fear of waiting to see if that unearthly noise woke your parents up. But it expanded our horizons and opened up our world to the point where we can't imagine living without it today. So, what are some activities from your generation that aren't as popular today? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this list, you will love 25 things 80s kids could do that today's kids can't. Also, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and check out our social medias, including my personal ones. Links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and as always, I'll see you next time. Ow, there's a chair there.